Hello, BookTube. Well, against all of my instincts and several European prediction models, this channel actually reached 15K subscribers. In the past, when we have reached a subscriber milestone of one kind or another, the tradition has been to do a Q&A. So I put out a call for questions, and I got a bunch of them. As usual, you people did not disappoint. So we're going to go through those now. I will try and get through as many of these as possible in one video, but if it goes long, I will cut every video off at around 30 minutes. And I ported all of these questions over from the actual comments field of the video where I called for them, so that I could cut out all of the excess stuff that I might be tempted otherwise to ignore or to read. So in the process of doing that, I may have dropped a question or two. If I dropped your question, it's nothing personal. I'm not dodging anything. Just wait for the next Q&A. So let's start right away and see how many of these we can get done in 30 minutes. Starting with that reading guy. Hello, Steve and Bean. What exactly is morality? Is it merely something we even involved into that should be evolved, I'm sure? When is it appropriate to give a dog a treat, given how they often used as behavioral manipulation? Okay, two different questions there. Morality is indeed an emergent property of just human evolution. It's one of the foremost ways that you can tell that is that it's not exclusive to humans. Plenty of animals have a recognizable morality that is no different at its basic roots than ours is. So yeah, it doesn't come from any kind of higher thought or especially any kind of higher being. It makes sense that communal animals would work for the benefit of a community. It makes sense that long-term familial bonds would create long-term familial affection and even a sense of altruistic sacrifice. That all makes sense. That it is not necessary to import goblins into that for it to make sense. That's question number one. And then the unconnected question number two is, when is it appropriate to give a dog a treat? I would say never. You are right that treats are grossly abused by humans of all kinds, whether they're the dog's owner or not, as a means of cheap and easy coercion from beings who, in most cases where that works, are the hopeless prisoner of the person rather than their friend. In a normal, healthy dog, the real treat will be affection from you. So, and if the dog's not inclined to affection from strangers and a treat will temporarily change that, then it's better to just leave it be, I would think. I don't know of many circumstances where giving a dog a treat, unless it's an actual treat, unless it's a rare thing, once in a while, as just something to spice up an afternoon or to make them happy or, happier for just a minute. But the normal way that I see treats dispensed is not healthy for the dog or the human in the long run, I think. MindDoc asks, if I remember correctly, you have mentioned before that you don't care for flash fiction. How short can a short story be and still have merit? Shortest short story I have read is probably Frederick Baum's one-page Answer, if we don't count the famous baby shoes one often attributed to Hemingway. Well, the key here isn't the length. The key here is the word that's right there in the description. Is it a story? Flash fiction, all the flash fiction that I've ever read, I've read bucket loads of it, is a premise, not a story. It's an outline, not a story. A story develops. It has an organic structure. It pulls the reader in. That can't happen in 4 paragraphs. So it's mainly a question of what you're doing, but it is still limited by the format. You need a little space to tell a story. I think that's obvious, but the 21st century is nothing if not lazy and entitled, so probably that's an imperialist viewpoint of mine. Randy Ray, the literate Texan. Sorry, I've got a little gnat buzzing around me here. Wonder why. Here's my question. What does a day of eating in the life of Steve Donoghue look like? Oh my. Well, it's not an urgent thing. I don't put a very high priority on eating. I've had many guests over the years as people have come here to Hyde Cottage go a long stretch and then say, don't you ever eat? You don't seem to be thinking about it. I have to remind myself that all of my guests get to me starving to death and badly sleep deprived. I don't know why, since they're all coming from no more than 4 hours away by plane, and yet every guest who comes here has not eaten in days and has not slept in days. They come to me as just this rag-shrouded war babies, so I have to remember to be conscious about that. But an average day of eating, well, I might go across the street to Dunkin' Donuts. I live in Massachusetts, so there's a Dunkin' Donuts across the street. I might go across the street to Dunkin' Donuts and get hash browns and maybe a blueberry muffin. I don't go to Dunkin' Donuts for coffee, but they have plenty of other stuff there that I love their hash browns. If I did something like that, I probably wouldn't eat again that day, except maybe for a bowl of steamed rice at the end of the day. I really don't put a high priority on it. Every once in a while, I'll stop for, a row of mega stuffed Oreos if I feel like that. But usually, usually I have a little bit relatively early in the day, a few hours after I wake up, and then once I'm situated at the fainting couch in front of a keyboard, I'm okay. I'm really okay. The thing that's most likely to interrupt that is Frida wanting to go out and do something, not hunger. And not thirst, now that I have a big iron water bottle that I have with me at all times. I stay well hydrated. That does wonders for me. That's probably not a satisfying answer, but I don't cook. So let's see here. Mystery and Mayhem. Congratulations on 15K, Steve. What is your strategy for keeping your channel interesting and keeping people tuning in for so long? Well, I'm immensely grateful that people have tuned in for so long. There are a couple of people who watch my videos, who've been watching my videos for years, right from the beginning. But in terms of keeping my videos interesting, I certainly don't put any thought into that, and this question abuts on a fundamental mystery of the universe, which is why anybody watches this channel at all. I do not know the answer to that question. I've never heard a good answer to that question. So I certainly don't sit and think, well, what kind of interesting slate of videos can I make today? What will interest people most? I certainly don't do that. Let's see here. Balin321 has a gigantic block of prose. Congratulations on 15K. Already looking forward to the inevitable 16K. This channel will never, in fact, reach 16K. I know you'll say it will never happen, but it will. No, I'm right. It never will happen. 3 questions. Number 1, did you consider yourself a good dancer when you were a young man? Okay, first of all, 28's not old. And second, no, I'm not a dancer at all. Not in the slightest. And unlike a lot of dude bros who say that, but they don't mean it, it's yet another black and white lie that they tell about themselves because they have practiced endlessly in their rooms. They only want to be discovered to be good. They don't want you to actually think they're not good. Unlike them, I actually mean it. No, I don't dance at all. Number 2, the first Irishman I've ever encountered was Barry Lyndon. Can you imagine my disappointment when I realized most Irishmen were not like him anymore? Who is your favorite Irish character in all of literature? No idea. No idea. Number 3, I've been wanting to write more, but every time I try to read what I've written the day before and just start to cringe. I feel like I don't have the life experience to write something interesting. It feels too edgy to write. Do you have any tips how I can get over the cringe feeling while writing, except getting a more interesting life, that is? Well, notice, you're not saying that the cringe feeling arises out of writing. You're saying that it arises out of reading what you've written. You could stop doing that. That is not part of writing. Anyway, that's part of editing, which takes place a good solid 6 months after you type the words "the end" at the end of a large piece of prose. But the other answer would be to attack the assumption in the question. The assumption in the question is that that bit about not having lived long enough to experience something interesting. That, I think, indicates that you are writing for an audience, and you shouldn't be. You should be writing for yourself. I guarantee you that you have experienced enough already to write something about those experiences, or to use those experiences as soil or groundwork for a work of imagination that you can handle, that's within your concept, within the ambit of what you've already experienced in life. I guarantee you can do that. Let's see here. Rasmus7493. Congrats. I'd love to know your thoughts on the Oulipo movement and other authors in that circle, or to phrase it differently, how much you hate it. I hate it quite a bit. More than words could express, I guess, would be the right way to put it in their case. Branching off from this, you wrote in your review of Calvino's letters that you may have to revisit and reevaluate some of his work. Have you done so? No, I have not yet done a systematic reread of Calvino. Congratulations again, and thank you for the unending amount of great content. The 1,000,000 milestone will come soon. 1,000,000 subscribers. I don't think so. Grix, congratulations, Steve. If you could have 2 magic doors in your house that each teleport you to 2 different locations, The first one back in time to a place you have already been in the past to see it again as it was then. And the second one to a place in the present that is too far from you to travel there, but you would love to go to if you could teleport. Which two places would you choose? Well, to take the second question first, for completeness sake, if I had a teleportation door, I would be tempted to take the bean to Australia. I've never been to Australia, never set foot on Australia. It'd be tempting to do that. But probably if I had that opportunity, the first 20 times I would use it would be to visit people that I already know. Just because it's such a falderall to go or to get them to come here. And as for the first one, back in time, so to a place you've already been to see it as it was then, you don't need a magic door to do that. There isn't any one place that I would go if I did that. I would go to the whole of the past and live it in the moment as it was then, with no knowledge of the future and all the sensory apparatus that I have since forgotten. That sounds so attractive, I might do that once a year. Random into WZ. Congrats on 15K. My question is simple. I know you are not the biggest fan of the current state of modern sci-fi fantasy, but off the top of your head, which current writers in the genre will be remembered in the future? Depends on what kind of a future we have. If the current pendulum swings and corrects itself, if the current social craze corrects itself, where identity politics is literally everything, where literally the only thing that is of importance to me or to anyone in the world is my Twitter feed. If that changes, then maybe some writers will emerge. Almost all of the current crop of science fiction and fantasy writers who are currently getting paid work today in the major periodicals are in that ideological movement. And therefore, all the stuff they're writing is worthless. I could mention people that predate it, like Robert Reed. I have a feeling, I would hope anyway, that in future generations, Robert Reed would be remembered as a great science fiction short story writer. We'll see. The other way that the pendulum could swing, of course, it would be really bad. It would mean there is no future for science fiction and fantasy. I'll have to hope that the former is correct. Kite562 reviews. Just a simple question, Mr. Donoghue. Mr. Donoghue. Steve is just fine. What or who was the book or person that inspired you to become a book reviewer? I'm just curious. I don't know if inspiration is too highfalutin a word. I was working in a newsroom, bashing out political editorials, and the guy who was running the arts desk needed a book review. He'd had a piece just collapse on him, and he needed a book review. He had already scheduled it for his page, for the page outline of a print newspaper. When that page outline, there was no internet, there was no digital photography. That page outline was done on a pasted board mock-up. And from that mock-up, a photographic negative was made that made the newspaper. So he needed something to fill that space. And he was desperate. And that is very real because back then, I don't know about today, but back then, if he didn't have anything to fill that space, if the advertising people who'd already gone home, if one of them had to be called back into the newsroom in order to slap up ads for that space so that it wasn't just blank in the morning, he would have been fired. And he was always a little bit desperate anyway, a little bit bug-eyed with anxiety anyway, and he asked me if I would be willing to write a book review, and I did. So I don't know if that counts as inspiration, more like desperation. Let's see here. Nerdishly Active asks, hey Steve, congrats on 15K. A few questions. How do you like your Kindle Scribe? I like it, but I have not just instinctively warmed to it. I don't reach for it. I really should spend a huge amount of time playing around with it, experimenting with it, and also I should tell myself on a Monday or a Tuesday, all right, for the next 7 days, you're only going to read on this thing. You're not going to pick up any other device. I should do that so that I get a feel for it. I haven't done that yet. What is your current favorite e-reader of choice? Do I have it here? Yes, it's the Kindle Oasis, just an old Kindle Oasis. Thought that it would be renewed. I thought it would be revamped this year, but Amazon is not revamping their e-readers. I think they're reading the tea leaves and thinking, there's no real reason to do this. You'll get people tongues wagging at tech shows, but no one will buy them. I love it. Absolutely love it. Let's see here. And finally, when annotating books, do you prefer using a pen, pencil, highlighter, and why? Never a highlighter. of course. Never a highlighter. But in terms of preference, my preference is to use my finger. My preference is to type a long annotation on an ebook and then email it to myself so that I don't even need to worry about finding it in the book. It's in my inbox. But if you're talking about a print and paper book, isn't that amazing? I don't even have one within reach except for these. Pencil. Annotating in pencil. I know a couple of reviewers who underline and annotate in pen. I've never understood that. But, let's see here. Jasper Antonelli, congratulations, or rather my condolences. How does it feel to be, for many people, the person who infectiously spreads the joy of reading and writing? Well, that part feels great. Absolutely great. The fact, if I can convey even a fraction of the sheer Christmas morning joy that I feel about reading to the rest of you, well, that part feels wonderful. The 15K, not so much, but that part feels great. Kamed's Journey, congratulations, apparently to your chagrin, on 50,000 subs. I like to think you are single-handedly encouraging readers to read more broadly. Not single-handedly. There are plenty of us out there, right? BookTube is not just YA enthusiasts anymore, and it's also not big 60,000 plus channels that lie nonstop. BookTube is full of genuine readers now, whose tastes are all over the map, and who are constantly talking about it and joking about it and talking with each other about it. So it's not just me. And with that thought, if you had only one book to read for the rest of time, which book would you choose? I, of course, would not choose that. It's ridiculous. I would not. These questions: one book on a desert island, one book for the rest of your life. I've never understood what the questioner is trying to elicit. I think the questioner is simply trying to ask, what book do I love the most? Or what book do I love and also think is inexhaustible? But the rest of time is not inexhaustible. The most inexhaustible book in the world would be boring in a tiny fraction of the rest of time. So I never actually understand the question as it's asked. If you're asking me for a bottomless book, well, the stereotypical answer is the Bible, and that would work for me. That would certainly work for me. Not for the rest of time, obviously, but still, I consider that a fairly inexhaustible book for a human lifetime. Grix again. Any anecdote you'd care to share about Harold Bloom? What is the most perverse book you have ever enjoyed reading? What animal have you found most difficult to understand when interacting with it? Not for its lack of intelligence, but for how different it was from you. Well, I don't know, to take these in order, I don't know what anecdote I could share with Harold Bloom unless we're under the impression that I have known him, personally. I'm not sure that that's ever been told on this channel or made canon. What is the most perverse book that you've ever enjoyed reading? Probably Dennis Cooper. His books get pretty perverse, but I do enjoy them, every one of them. And what animal have you found most difficult to understand when interacting with it? You might think, for those of you who are new to this channel, I've interacted with a lot of non-human animals. And you might think that that would be, for instance, a snake. I had a friend once who had a pet snake, or an octopus. I spent a lot of time at Woods Hole and also at the old New England Aquarium here in Boston when it had all sorts of hands-on labs and all sorts of stuff was done. It wasn't quite the Disneyland that it is today. And I therefore have met, so to speak, a lot of octopuses. And you might think that it's either one of those, but it's actually cats. Cats are the ones that are most inscrutable to me. I honestly do not understand. An old cat, sure, I might understand, but young cats also will simply go completely stone statue immobile in the sun when they are wide awake. I honestly don't understand that. They're not sleeping, but they're not moving at all. And I don't understand their relationships with their humans at all, so I'm going to say cats. Not octopuses, not snakes, just cats. Let's see here. Bren BJ. Hi, Steve. Thanks for all you do for BookTube and your reviewers such as myself. Oh, did you write for Open Letters? Congrats on another milestone. Do you remember what your earliest published review was about? Or do you have an early standout review that you are proud of publishing? What did you review and where was it published? I'm pretty sure my first review was an Isaac Asimov book, and it was a pan. So maybe I was setting my foot on the path even then. But not in the way of, this is a review that I'm proud of. Nothing like that, no. Raziv2450, congrats on 15 subs. Who are your top 5 literary critics? Edgar Allan Poe would be one. William Hazlitt would be another. What's that? 2. Virginia Woolf. Elizabeth Hardwick. And Sam Sachs from the Wall Street Journal. There you go. That's 5 right there. BBZZ. I've recently started to read grandfather stories by Samuel Hopkins Adams. After finding it randomly at a used bookstore. You found Samuel Hopkins Adams at a used bookstore? Good Lord. Since you've read everything, what else by this author is good in your opinion? Well, if you're reading him, then you know the good here is qualified, right? He has an antique flavor to him. He doesn't read like he's writing in the modern day. You have to sort of get used to that. If you're used to that, and if you're liking it, then maybe you are. I would certainly suggest Average Jones. I know that's a fairly stereotypical answer, or once upon a time it was, but also he wrote a book called Flaming Youth. I think it was probably one of his most popular books. You could try that as well. I'm sure that, actually, now that I think about it, I'm sure that he's on Project Gutenberg. I'm sure that all of this is. So you could try those. If you like him, you're probably, he's very much of a piece. If you like him, you're probably going to like everything that he wrote. Constantino6668 has a doctoral dissertation. 2,000 words. I thought I left a stricture about that when we were talking about Q&A. This is going to be the rest of this 30 minutes. It's just reading this question. Congrats. A controversial question from me, skimming. Do you ever do it? No. It seems like it's very frowned on by readers in general, but I've never really had a problem with it, especially if there is some part of the book that is particularly boring. A recent example being a love triangle in a fantasy novel, woefully done and repetitive, pretty much skimmed every time it came up. But also wonder whether people really ever do it, as they say. Part of what makes bestseller books, or airport books, whatever you want to call them, like Wilbur Smith, etc., so readable, was being able to naturally read. I wonder if I'm really in the minority. Some stuff is definitely not worth reading carefully. Also, a related question. Okay, that was barely a question. That was mostly an op-ed piece. And we're only a third of the way done. Also, a related question. You have mentioned that there are books where the second half / ending changed your view of the book. And I have to say it has never happened to me. If the first half sucks, or even if it's really mediocre, there is nothing a writer could do to make that up for that. I mean, even if the second half is awesome, in a book that pretty much sucked, which I have never encountered, it would feel like a bad book. The opposite has happened to me a few times, where the first half is so good, I will forgive the awfulness of the rest. I guess my question is, so that last 500 words was not the question. And now you're not even sure this is the question. You just guessed that it is. If so, is when to DNF? Well, when I talk about wanting to read a book all the way to the end in case I'm pleasantly surprised, I'm talking about myself. Normal people, ordinary readers who have far less reading time than I do, I would say DNF as soon as the book becomes a grind, even if it means you're going to miss something. If, for instance, in English language translation, if you were to DNF Crime and Punishment, the minute it becomes a grind, you would miss the great parts, I think, for most readers. But it doesn't matter, because you have very little time to read. So I say don't hesitate to DNF if a book is dragging for you. I find it hard to DNF. Okay, you're still going on. I find it hard to DNF a book even when it sucks a lot. So now I am trying a 50% rule. Seems generous enough. But if by the halfway point I'm not into it, to stop or skim the rest to see how much it sucks. But there's still this nagging feeling like maybe I didn't read it right or I missed something. Well, had I known that this was here in this column, I would have skimmed it. In answer to the question that's buried in here, I would say DNF if the book is boring you and move on to something else. As long as you're not making a fetish out of DNFing itself, the little dopamine hit of DNFing, as long as that's not the reward system, as long as you're giving the book a chance, then, once you've given it a chance, drop it if it's not working. Nuance88. Steve, 2 questions. 1, what has surprised you the most, pleasantly or otherwise, about creating BookTube videos? And 2, what do you hope will change, /evolve about the BookTube community over time? Feel free to say food for thought on this one. Well, number 1, what surprised me the most about making BookTube videos, as opposed to just BookTube in general, is the weird parasocial relationship of it. I have only gradually become aware over time that I am, for a lot of people, not real. I'm a figure on the TV screen. A lot of people watch my videos on one of those big plasma screen TVs. Hey, baby, what you doing? She was Little Miss Popularity on our walk this afternoon. Oh my God, she was stopped every human being and said, "No, I don't care what you're doing. You have to fuss over me." But and get back to my point. I didn't realize at first that making thousands of these videos would create a mosaic. It would basically create an AI template for a version of me that people would just see. They would see that version. That they would talk to that version every day. And I guess the thing that surprised me is the ways in which that me is not me, and the ways in which that me is me. If that makes any sense at all. I don't know if that does or not. And then your second question was what you hope will change / evolve about the book community over time. I'm not even hoping for changing and evolving. I'm hoping that BookTube sticks around. Just as it is. I'm hoping that it sticks around. Because I don't think that it will. And I love it. So I don't want it to go away. Nick Piccarilli, what type of writing courses did you teach? Did you ever consider making teaching your main career? It sounds like you enjoyed it, and you seem like a natural teacher to me. I did very much enjoy teaching, especially teaching writing. Basic stuff, just Comp 101, or the equivalent thereof. Just basic stuff. And I did enjoy it. Yeah, there were parts of it that I didn't like. I hate the spreadsheet minutia boredom of lesson plans or grading records or stuff like that. I mainly like the in-class interaction. And I relatively quickly, after only a couple of years, I realized I can get that part of it without all the rest if I leave, if I just don't do it anymore. But I really do enjoy talking about writing, but also teaching writing in a way. The pundits often say that writing is a subject that can't be taught, but a whole bunch of skills that help you to write can be taught. Let's see here. Izzy Rosen, D.C. As a native Washingtonian, I'd love to hear more about your time there. My Washington interlude. What neighborhood did you call home in my beloved swamp? Silver Spring. Favorite sites, haunts, or walks? There was a park I was fond of. And favorite books about Washington? I have a whole shelf of them here. I realized, 10 years ago, more than that I'm probably never going to see Washington, D.C. again. And so I have a whole shelf of books. I would recommend Meg Greenfield's book, Washington. Context of it is a little sad, but if you don't know the context, you won't know that from the book. And the book is delightful. Also, Katharine Graham, of Washington Post fame, wrote a book, a long-awaited memoir of hers. But she also wrote the introduction and a couple of bridging sections for a big book called Katharine Graham's Washington. And it's wonderful. It captures the social side of Washington in addition to the political side. Just Katharine Graham's Washington is a wonderful book. If you can find, it's a big, heavy, ornate, beautifully done hardcover with black and white illustrations all throughout. I strongly recommend that. Let's see here. Zoe2812. Congratulations, Steve and Frida. Do you know why the Brattle Bookshop doesn't sell romance books? I'm guessing that it's two reasons. One is that they tend to be a little snobby when it comes to genres. You can tell that in the shop the way it is by the incredibly haphazard nature of the science fiction section. It's not even alphabetized. No one ever cares about it at all. It could be a bit of genre snobbery. It could also be that maybe deep in the past, somebody realized if we open the door to romance, then we'll be buried in it. Just buried in it. I've had people say that. The guy who bought books for Avenue Victor Hugo used to say the same thing. He used to say, no. If I didn't have that rule, they had that same rule. And Vince used to say, if I didn't have that rule, the only books that would ever come in the door to be sold to me would be romance novels, and they'd come in by the thousands. So it's either have that rule or become a used bookstore that sells romance novels. And I don't know that that's true. I think his shop and the Brattle and a whole bunch of other places, they use a bit of discrimination with what they're taking in. It's not all or nothing. It's not, no one's got a gun to your head. I think it could be done. But neither one of those might be the reason. I don't know. Those are the two that I can guess at, from other stores I've known and made the same decision. Let's see here. C. Hagen, congratulations. Have you ever read/reviewed The Sky and the Forest by C.S. Forrester? You don't blunt a have you read question by slashing it with reviewed. A slash includes both. You are asking me if I've read a Forrester novel, which is a have you read question of an egregious nature. I found it to be a pretty interesting story that I keep thinking about every so often, and I want your opinion of it. First of all, I'd be fascinated to know why you keep thinking about it. But I thought it failed. I know that a lot of critics, it's the weirdest thing that he ever wrote in a lot of ways, and a lot of critics like it for that. But to me, the weirdness is not enough on its own. It has to work, and it doesn't. In my opinion, it doesn't work. Dan Sarkozy, what's your favorite book of literary criticism? Congrats, by the way. On or of? I don't have any favorite books about literary criticism, but of literary criticism, there are a whole bunch. I have a whole bookcase of them. Maybe Bartleby in Manhattan by Elizabeth Hardwick. Let's stop there, and we'll move on to part 2.